Without doubts, I think it's by far the best league in the world.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League?
Mission accomplished in the Premier League.
So let's talk about Tottenham. A lot of moves in the offseason. They did spend some money, bringing in a lot of new faces. And I have a lot of respect for Conte in terms of like getting the most out of his team. We kind of saw his impact right away when he took over. And he kind of like, he's the kind of guy to me who has a plan, who has a method, and he's going to stick to it. I think he's a much better version of Mourinho, if you will. Like he's might be set in his ways, but I think he can kind of work with his players, connect with his players, and actually make a team. And I think that's why it's important that this offseason, the additions they brought to kind of complete that picture that he's trying to build over there. Bickler, let's start with you on this one. What do you make of their window? In terms, let's start with the incomings.
Yeah, so I mean, if I look at incomings, I say like, we take this sort of identity that Conte has given the side, and we talk about how all good Premier League sides sort of really find their identity. And that's what he did with Tottenham last year. And these signings to me are sort of like fit the mold of that identity. I think Basuma is going to be another piece that they have to play with them. But Don Bailey moving out, that gives them sort of a like for like swap with another piece at a really, really good price. Carlson, and we talked about like if he's not on your side, you hate him. But I think if he's on your side, you really like him because, I mean, let's face it, like Kane's not going to bully anyone. I really think like Son's just going to he's going to pick you up and give you a hug if he knocks you over. He's like the nicest dude ever. I think Carlson gives you a little bit of like steel that you probably need in that side. So that's a lot of money for him. But I mean, I think those are good pieces when we look at incomings. And, give Tottenham credit. I give Conte credit. Like when we were talking last year, we were talking about how it was going to be a battle between them and Arsenal for that 5th spot. And now we're at a spot and we're at a point where like Tottenham looks poised to overtake Chelsea for that 3 spot in the league quite easily.
Yeah, I want to talk about like the price tag. So I'm glad you kind of brought that up because Bissouma, I mean, he could probably have gone for more if it wasn't for some of the legal troubles and stuff like that. Probably affected his value, I would think. I know it almost felt like because he was rumored with Liverpool for a while as well, and I just feel like his price tag kind of like went in a lot lower than I thought he would be. So I guess you could look at it as a steal as well. But are you shocked, Gally, in the amount of money spent on our buddy Richarlison over here, who is in my top 5 of annoying players, mostly for reasons Bickler probably stated, but either way, he's like towards the top of that list. But are you shocked with like the price tag that they spent on him?
I am a little shocked. I think if you look at this list of players, I think you have to maybe be most shocked that Daniel Levy pulled this off. Daniel Levy gets criticized often for not spending money and not supporting the club and balancing the books. They built a beautiful stadium and didn't fill it with beautiful players, as Mourinho basically said last year when he was there. I think Conte changed everything at that club. I think he rebuilt it. He invigorated them. He created a presence that they could win, and they pushed on and they fought for him. And I mean, you see it here. Richarlison is a Conte player all day. I mean, the guy once said Diego Costa is one of my favorite strikers because I'd be afraid to meet him in an alley. And that is like Antonio Conte at their finest. Like, I want a striker who I'm afraid to meet in a dark alley. And let me tell you, if you met Richarlison in a dark alley, you'd probably be buried under the alley when it ended. So I think Richarlison is going to do just fine with Antonio Conte. And I really, really like the Lenglet buy. Like, I think that the free loan from Barcelona, I think he's a class center back. I think he didn't fit in with Barcelona's system. And I think when you play in a back 3 for Conte, you understand your job, and wing backs are so important. And then he goes and grabs Perisic. He's already talking about playing Lucas Moura as a wing back in the Premier League because he's like, I made Victor Moses a first-team Premier League player of the year. And he was a winger that went out on loan 4 times at his club. Like, I can do this with anyone because my system makes good players play great. and they still have stars, you know, and I think Richarlison adds to those stars. I don't know if he's a starter because I think what we don't count on that screen is Betancourt and Kulusevski as loans that became permanent buys in the summer. Because to me, those are two more additions to this window that make it even more impressive. And they're guys who, like we say with Luis Diaz as Liverpool supporters, already had a half a season to bet into the process, into the philosophy. So we'll get to our predictions later, but I'm a little bullish on Tottenham. I think they're making a big jump. I'm with Paul. They've jumped Arsenal. They've jumped United. They've jumped Chelsea on actual talent, let alone the fact I think they have the better manager and a better cohesive side.
I think it's just a better direction overall right now. I think it would be different maybe like a year or so ago in terms of like how I would evaluate it, but I feel like, they know where they're going. There's kind of like a direction and leadership on that team now that's centralized around Conte, which is, gonna be, I think, key to their success as well. Because I have them, I know it's like jumping ahead for predictions, but I have them as third as well, over like Chelsea this season, right behind City and Liverpool, but I don't think for the top spot. So Bickler, Gally was talking about Richarlison perhaps not starting there, which I can also see. Who do you see starting over there up top with, especially like the season that Kulusevski had coming over? I mean, the impact he had, it would be hard to bench him, but then you don't spend 65 million and sit him on the bench. The Saint City.
Well, they might.
Yeah. I mean, I think they could be stockpiling depth, although that's expensive, but I mean, you could also see them do a situation where they push Kane forward instead of him playing almost further in like a false nine, like they tend to do with Harry Kane. They could push him forward and have Son in like a free roll 10. They could play around with that. Son does do very well when he's up in that sort of central area. So they have a couple of options there. I can tell you what, they're not going to spend that kind of money and then worry about who plays where. They're going to be very happy that they have those options.
Yep.
So if you look for a weakness or a concern for Spurs, Gally, where is that?
Oh, it's the wing backs. And the reason I say that is they spent 17 million on Jed Spence, and I think he could be a really, really good signing for the future. But didn't we talk about this? Well, if we had this show 3 years ago, we would have talked about this when they signed Ryan Sessegnon from Fulham, and we would have said, oh, wow, they got this best left young fullback and player of the future. And what I really like about Conte is he recognizes when players aren't his quickly, because he like told Emerson Royal and Serge Reguilon and Mbale and Lo Celso, they were like, yeah, you don't even have to come on the away on the foreign trip for preseason. We'd rather you stay here in London and find a new club to play for, because you just take up space. I'd rather take kids with me than Serge Reguilon, who's a guy who started the last international competitive match for Spain. So he just realizes players aren't in his fit. I think it's the wingbacks, because to me, Conte's whole system predicates around the wingbacks performing at a high level. So it's Doherty and it's Perisic. And Perisic is an old guy coming to the Premier League who hasn't played a lot of minutes in the preseason. And I hope it's a really good move for them, because he was really good at Inter and at times he plays like a right wing. But I really think it's their wingbacks in that system. And honestly, it's crazy to say this, it's Eric Dyer, because he's going to be the central linchpin in the middle of the defense. And Conte's talked about how much he loves him, how much he's the leader of the team and the leader of the defense. So I think it's Eric Dyer could be like quietly the most important piece to Tottenham actually making a big step forward, because they're going to win this year by scoring some goals, but having a great, great defensive core, because that's how Conte wins things. And he wins a lot.
Eric Dyer is a puzzle, isn't he? Like, he does, regardless of who goes there. So he must be doing something not only on the pitch, but behind the scenes as well. The way he carries himself and, like the way he leads, that regardless of which manager comes there, they always value Dyer and, make a spot for him. Either way, like here or there, they try to fit him in. What is your concern with Spurs, Bickler? If you had picked one weak spot that you could be like, this could be their undoing, because we talked about, I think they saw the depth, especially midfield and moving forward. My concern was like depth in defense, but let me ask yours.
Yeah, to me, I don't think they have the sort of the solidity, the consistent, solid foundation in midfield yet. Like I don't think that that's necessarily been sort of ironed out for them, and I think they're an interesting side where they seem to win games without necessarily winning the possession battle. And I think a lot of that comes down to Conte's ability to defend and the quality that they have up front. I think for them to get consistently and to build upon that, they're going to have to start winning more games from the midfield. And I don't necessarily know that I see that yet. Like I still have serious question marks about Bissouma, and I have serious question marks how they didn't get more out of Dembele out, because I think that he's a phenomenal talent. And they brought him in from League One as a French sensation, and they just could never get it to work. And so I think that's where I'm going to be really watching this year, is sort of the heart of that midfield.
So I mean, that's a good question. I mean, what do you think, Gally, in terms of that Bissouma versus Ndombele? Kind of like what is Conte seeing in Bissouma that he did not see in Ndombele?
I honestly believe he sees a player who's proven he can take the physical rigors of playing in the Premier League. And I think that's probably what didn't work for Ndombele the most. He also had 4 different managers, if you count, the 5 weeks that Ryan Mason was the caretaker manager there. I mean, he played for a lot of different people. It didn't work. I think he was asked to do a lot of different things in different systems that never any one of them fit him. Had he gone to the right fit in the Premier League? Do I think he could play in the Premier League? Yes. Do I think he likes the physical nature of England? I don't. And I think Bissouma's proven he can play in the rigors of the Premier League. It'll be interesting to me to what they'll do with like the Betancourt, Højbjerg, Bissouma midfield and what that will look like. Will they play with a 2? Will they play with a 3? I think that's really the biggest area of the pitch. But if you want me to tell you my biggest question, is Hugo Lloris still at a level to keep Tottenham competing at the top end of the Premier League? Because I've seen like small cracks, small mistakes. He's getting a little bit older. I mean, he's almost 40 years old. I know he's still France's number 1, but it looks like he might be passing that torch even before the World Cup. So it'll be interesting to see there. I would question, they've improved their defense with Lenglet. We talked about Dyer, and I think Romero was one of the best buys in the entire Premier League last year. I think the kid is going to be an absolute stud, and within 5 years, he will be playing at a much, much bigger club than Tottenham, or Conte will still be there, and Tottenham will be a big, big club, and Romero will be a big reason why. I question whether or not they shouldn't have strengthened that keeper and not bought a backup. I feel like they should have bought someone to actually push Lloris and not a Forster who was just taking a payday and a new flat in London.
Yeah, I think it's just more like to have some experience, that which I can see as well, because I mean it is in that sense Forster does provide that. So prediction time, I think we already spilled the beans early on anyway when we were talking about him, but where do you have him, Gally?
I actually have them 3rd, guys, and if I was making a bullish prediction, they're the only side in the Premier League that even has a puncher's chance to talk about dancing their way into the title picture. And it would take injuries, it would take a drop-off. But even if City and Liverpool hit the heights they have, I believe Spurs have bridged the gap a little bit to those 2 juggernauts. And if it was 18 points last year that 3rd place was behind the leader, I believe I wouldn't be shocked at all if it was 7-8 points this year and Spurs fall 8-9 points off the chance of winning the title. And if Conte stays there 5 years, Spurs will have the greatest chance they've ever had to pick up a Premier League title. It's what the guy does.
I just don't see him staying that long, I guess, because that's not what he does usually either. So maybe that's why. But I hear what you're saying. I think a lot of the confidence that I know I have, and it sounds like you guys as well, is because of who's in charge. So the people coming in, and when we say this, as Liverpool fans, we say this for Liverpool all the time. After a certain time, you just have confidence when somebody is signed that there's a plan and they're going to fit into that system, given the benefit of the doubt. And I feel like Conte kind of gets that. I have them third as well. Bickler, where do you have them?
Yeah, I'm bullish too. I think they're third, and I think they're closing the gap on second.
I believe so too. I mean, definitely would not be like you're saying, Gally. I do not see the point difference being that high, and they're the team that could make that run and get it closer and closer. But we do still have them as third finishing this season.